I get lots of comments like, okay, we see the system, we identified the parasitic programming. What now? What do we actually do? The question, what do we do, works as a diagnostic. When you actually see the parasite and separate its programs from yourself, what happens isn't intellectual understanding. It's a factual change of state. Depression, which was the result of suppressing your real self under layers of foreign code, just leaves. Background anxiety, which was maintained by the constant conflict between what you are and what the system demands you be, disappears. You suddenly understand what you want, because now you hear yourself, not the echo of someone else's instructions. It feels like sudden silence in your head where constant noise used to be. That's the paradigm shift. Someone who actually saw the system stops waiting for instructions from above, stops waiting for someone to tell them what they should do or asking for another system to be offered. They stop being an object and become a subject. But if someone asks, okay, I understood about the system, what do I do now? And they still have depression, anxiety, and don't know who they are or what they want, then no, they didn't understand. They intellectually agreed with the concept, but the code is still running. The parasite is still at the wheel, it just has a new story about how the host recognized the system. But when this happens, when you feel for the first time in years that you exist, that you have your own will, your own desires, your own perception, you don't suddenly start loving bureaucracy or tolerating forced hierarchy as a given. Opposite. Now it pisses you off even more. Before, you just felt the meaninglessness and arbitrariness, but now you see the entire mechanism. How it works, why it works, who benefits, what tools it uses to protect itself. This matters to say up front, because otherwise the rest of the conversation is pointless. The person will look for instructions on fighting the system, not understanding that fighting is part of the program. Real liberation is when you stop executing the code, and this happens through recognition. So, having said that, what could be done about the external system of control that is still running regardless of your awareness? Everything the system taught you about resistance is a trap. Barricades, protests, revolutionary movements, they're all pre-programmed responses. The system wrote the script for its own opposition. Every revolution feeds it. Every protest energizes it. Every angry mob gives it exactly what it needs to justify its next iteration of control. Think about Occupy Wall Street. Massive movement, global attention, people camping in financial districts worldwide. What happened? The system ate it whole, digested it, and shit out a stronger version of itself. Banks got bigger, inequality got worse, and the protest became a Netflix documentary. The hippie movement started as consciousness expansion, ended as a consumer demographic. Punk rock, anti-establishment rage, packaged and sold as hot topic. Every single counterculture gets metabolized into product lines and therapeutic frameworks. Why? The system needs conflict to survive. It feeds on opposition. Your protest is its validation. When you fight it on its terms, you're playing a rigged game where losing is the only option. So put your pitchforks back in the shed. We're not organizing a revolution. Revolutions are a waste of time because they're built into the system's immune response. Here's what actually threatens the system: people who can see it and refuse to execute its code. The system requires invisibility to function. It needs you to mistake its programs for your thoughts. It's narratives for reality. It's pathology for normalcy. When enough people see the code instead of the illusion, the program fails to run. Not through battle, through recognition. This channel isn't a resistance base. It's a recognition point. Most of us spent decades in quiet desperation, unable to share what we saw without being pathologized. They called it overthinking, idealism, or immaturity. When I was a kid, they called my refusal to lie pathological honesty, like truth itself was a disease that needed treatment. The system isn't built for critical thinkers. It's built for compliance, for the convenient, for those who color inside the lines and call it creativity. Your ability to see through bullshit isn't a disorder. Your refusal to accept obvious lies isn't naivety. Your anger at injustice isn't excessive emotional sensitivity. These are signs that you're still alive in a system designed to produce zombies. The mental health industry became the system's greatest achievement. Instead of helping people see clearly, it helps them adapt to the sickness. Got depression from living in an insane society? Here's medication to help you function within it. Dread bureaucratic procedures? Let's explore your resistance to authority issues. Can't connect with people wearing social masks? Must be your attachment disorder. They turned everything into compliance training. But here's the thing about mind parasites. They can only survive when the host doesn't recognize them as such. The parasitic system works through invisibility. It hides inside your assumptions, your emotional reactions, your sense of what's normal and realistic. It speaks through your internal monologue, convincing you its voice is yours. When you really see it, something fundamental shifts. You stop executing the code. Not through effort or discipline. You literally cannot unsee what you've seen. You become incompatible with the program. And this is what terrifies the system. Not protesters with signs, not revolutionaries with manifestos. Just people who see clearly and speak plainly about what they see. If you just woke up and want to scream about it from every rooftop, start your YouTube channel. Send me the link, I'll subscribe, and even add your videos to my external files playlist here on this channel. My goal isn't organizing resistance. My goal is much simpler and much more dangerous. Letting isolated people know they're not alone in seeing this. Creating connections between those who recognize the code. Not to fight anything, but to stop participating in the illusion. The system doesn't collapse from external pressure. It collapses when critical mass stops believing its story. When enough people recognize the voice in their head isn't theirs. When the narrative breaks and cannot be repaired. This isn't about hope or inspiration or any of that therapeutic garbage. This is about raw pattern recognition. Once you see how the magic trick works, you can't be fooled by it again. And when enough people in the audience see the wires, the show ends. Not through protest, through collective recognition that there was never any magic at all. The difference between protest and refusal is everything. Protest engages with the system's logic. It accepts the frame and fights within it. Refusal steps outside the frame entirely. It doesn't argue with the propaganda. It identifies it as propaganda and moves on. It doesn't fight the parasite. It recognizes it as foreign and stops feeding it. Every person who sees this clearly and refuses to pretend otherwise creates a crack in the illusion through simple, consistent refusal to participate in the lie. We observe, we articulate, we stay aligned with what's real. The revolution already happened the moment you saw through it. Now it's just a matter of how many others make the same recognition before the whole thing becomes unsustainable. So yeah, I want you to understand this, selfishly, because the more people who see it, the less possible it becomes to maintain. And when maintaining the illusion becomes more expensive than dropping it, the system doesn't fight back. It simply stops functioning. Logistics. Most of us spend decades, unable to share what we thought, unable to share what we saw, Да, блядь, unable to share what we saw. Почему я... Isn't a resistance based? It helps them to adapt, блядь. Not protesters with protesters.